لفسق وإن الشياطين ليوحون إلى أوليائهم ليجادلوكم وإن أطعتموهم إنكم لمشركون صدق الله العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. My dear respected listeners, last week we started talking about the sending of the Prophet ﷺ into this world and the reasons behind it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in Surah Al-Jum'ah, هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. Three purposes of the sending of the Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning as a blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done upon the humankind. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم. A Rasul was sent upon them and he is of their kind. رسولا منهم, he is from among them. يتلو عليهم آياته. The first purpose of the sending of the Prophet ﷺ is to recite the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the people to whom he's been sent. And that includes all of us. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, and purifies them, does their tazkiyah. From the same word is zakat, which is the specific amount of money that we give every year in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to purify the remainder of what we have. So if we do not give zakat, the remaining part of our wealth does not become pure and permissible for us to use. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ, and to teach them, to give them knowledge of kitab and hikmah. And Hazan Mufassirin have said, what the most Mufassirin have went with is that kitab refers to the Quran and hikmah refers to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. One very important aspect of the whole, all three of these, tilawat of kitab, or the words of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, purification of our internal self and our external self, and knowing, having the knowledge, the true knowledge of the book and the sunnah of Allah, of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a very important aspect is to know how to behave in general. So how to behave with ourselves, with our bodies, with what we've been given, and how to behave and interact with others. And all of this comes under the heading of akhlaq. So when we classify, when we divide the aspects of the knowledge of deen, one of them, and the most important one of them, and the first one of them, is ilm al-aqaid, the knowledge of aqaid, the knowledge of beliefs. Then there is ilm al-a'mal, the knowledge of deeds. And then there is ilm al-akhlaq, ilm of akhlaq, knowledge of etiquettes, knowledge of behavior. What is to be our behavior with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is to be our behavior with us ourselves, and what is to be our behavior with the people around us or the people that we interact with, the other creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of this is part of our deen. Today, inshallah, what I want to talk about specifically is that our bodies are, along with everything else that belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to know that our bodies and all parts of our body belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes, although alhamdulillah, most of us believe that everything belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and theoretically we believe that whatever we have belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but at times we act in a manner where our actions say that we are making or using our bodies in a way that they do not belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but rather they are, na'udhu billah, our own property. Something that we own, something that we are masters of, and something upon which we can establish our own rule. What we want to do, we will do with our own bodies. What we do not want to do, we will not do with our own bodies. This goes against the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ and teachings of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, He is the one who creates you where you are created, in the wombs of the mothers. Kaifa yasha, whatever way He wills, however He wills. And He is the one who sustains you. Upon Him, every single function and every single existence of all that you have, including your bodies, depends. So it comes to reason that when it does not belong to us, the rule of the one who owns it should be applied to our bodies. And this was one basic purpose of sending the Prophet ﷺ. In fact, all the prophets, that they taught the people what is the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in what you do to your own selves, in how you behave with your own selves. So, as a general principle, we should know that whatever we think good for our bodies will not be considered good. Whatever we think bad for our bodies will not be considered bad. The criterion is against which good and bad, clean and unclean, pure and impure, halal and haram will be judged is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the word of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the way the Sahaba understood it, the companions, the noble companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam understood it and applied to their lives. Living in this country particularly, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, this is becoming a widespread issue with Muslims, that the responsibility of nourishing our bodies that has been kept upon us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that this body that we've given you, you have to feed it, and you have to feed it according to what we have told you to. You will give it to eat what we have allowed, and you will hold it back from what we have prohibited. And this is becoming a general issue. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all to the right path and give us the strength to act upon the right guidance and right knowledge. This is becoming a widespread. Even the Muslim countries, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, are not saved from this evil. And that evil is that many times Muslims would feed their bodies, give to themselves something to eat that is not permissible by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is such an important thing that a lot depends on it. The Prophet ﷺ has said in a hadith that if a person is very pious, the more or less meaning of the hadith, if a person is very pious, in fact he worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so much that his body becomes like a dry stick. He's worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so hard, yet none of it is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he gets no reward for that on the Day of Judgment. The reason is that what he ate, what he put in his stomach was haram, was not permitted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that if somebody is wearing a clothing, even a single thread of that is haram. And how could that be haram? It is earned, either it is earned through an impermissible way, or it is by nature haram, something that he may have earned in a lawful way, but in and of itself it is haram. For example, silk for men, pure silk for men is haram. If even a thread of their clothing is haram, none of their ibadat is accepted. None of their ibadat are accepted. And ibadat or worship is the reason why we accept what is right and we stay away from what is wrong. For example, it has been said about Friday prayers that a person who leaves 3 Friday prayers consecutively Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away their capacity to accept what is good. If somebody consecutively on purpose leaves 3 Friday Salah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away their capacity to accept what is good. So my dear respected brothers, if ibadat are not accepted, then the very capacity to accept what is right and to know the difference between right and wrong is taken away. It is such an important thing. That is why we learn from the Sahaba, we see in their examples, that they paid a they were very meticulous about what they were eating. It comes in narrations about Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een that they had developed a habit of going without food days on end. In some narrations it comes that they would go even 6 days, as much as 6 days without eating. Can we think, is that humanly possible? These were the Sahaba, and why? Because they were very particular. It is mentioned in those narrations that they were very particular about what they find to eat. If they would find something that is not permissible by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is not halal, they will give it up, rather stay hungry and not eat. It comes in narrations, and I have narrated this narration many times. It comes in narrations about Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh, that he had a servant, he had a slave who would bring him food. And he was a Muslim servant. And every single time he would bring food to him, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh would research that food, would ask him, where did you get this? Where did you get this? How did you earn it? Wherefore does it come from? So sometimes we are confused, we confuse each other. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. When somebody gives us food to eat, and somebody asks them politely that, is this halal, or did you get it from a halal source? People become crazy, people become mad. Bhai, he's only asking you about something that's very important in deen. Is it halal or is it haram? It is his right to know. You talk about freedom of information. Why do our brains become closed when somebody asks us about if what you are bringing for us to eat is halal or haram? Where did you get it? Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh knew that person. He was his slave. He would bring food to him every single day, every single time. And every single time Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh would ask him, where did you get it? How did you get it? Are we more or higher in taqwa, or more pious, or more meticulous about our deen than the Sahaba? If we become, our ego gets hurt when somebody asks us a simple question, where did you get this food from? We start arguing them, are we not Muslims? Are we not Muslims? Do we not believe in Allah? Only because you have a beard, you are a Muslim? My brother Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh every single day is asking his slave, what kind of food are you bringing? And it so happened that Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh was hungry for 3 days. Did not have anything to eat. And then his slave brought him some milk. So at that particular instance, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh did not ask him, and partook from that milk, consumed that milk, drank it. At that slave of his asked that, every single time you ask me, where did I get this milk from? Every single time you ask, you did not ask me today. Said, you are my slave, you bring my food every single day to me. I did not ask, but tell me, where did you get it from? He said that before I had accepted Islam, I used to recite incantations. And I had treated a non-Muslim family with my incantations, and they had not paid me. So I was passing in that area, and that family gave me compensation in form of this milk. Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh immediately upon hearing this started to vomit, tried to vomit that milk out. Imagine, he is the most pious person after the Anbiya, the highest of Sahaba. 3 days of hunger, and he has consumed something, milk, about which you do not know for sure it's haram. Because it is a difference of opinion among the ulama that if somebody is getting their payment from the days before they became Muslim, at max it can be called mushtaba, something ambiguous that you do not know for sure about if it's halal or haram. Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh, about him the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his life has said that you will for sure enter Jannah. There is no way that you can enter Jahannam. We were reading in tafsir about, in our weekend course, we will read it, I think, that Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, these ayat, the last part of Surah Al-Fajr, Ya ayyatuhan nafsul mutma'inna, irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyya, fadkhuli fi ibadi, wadkhuli jannati, my peaceful soul, return to me, enter my pious or my slaves, my special slaves, and enter Jannah. When the Prophet ﷺ said that this will be said to people, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu said, Ya Rasulullah, what a great honor. The Prophet ﷺ said, Abu Bakr Siddiq, this will be said to you when you pass away. This Abu Bakr Siddiq tries to vomit out whatever he's consumed. And then what happens, because he was 3 days hungry, his stomach was so empty that even if he tried, he could not vomit it out. So he drank some water over it and then started to vomit out. So it started coming out of his stomach, and that slave is seeing. And then he vomited it out so much that blood started to come out from his mouth. His stomach, his insides started to bleed. So that slave asked, Ya Abu Bakr Siddiq, first of all, you were hungry for 3 days. You did not know where it came from. Now you have vomited it out. All the milk is out. Even blood, you started to bleed. Why are you being so harsh on yourself? He said, if Abu Bakr Siddiq has to lay down his life to get this out of their stomach, he will do so, because he's himself heard the Prophet ﷺ say that even if a single particle of a body is nourished upon haram, is nourished upon impermissible things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made Jannat haram upon it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Jannat will not accept that body which even a particle of which has been nourished upon haram. My dear respected brothers, these are things that we need to be very particular about, especially living in smaller towns or less known towns or less populated by Muslim, those towns that have a smaller Muslim population in the United States. We have to be very particular, because this becomes harder and harder. The reason is that it's not that in Madison we do not have enough Muslims. We have, alhamdulillah, by an estimate, we have over 5,000 Muslims in this small town. But we have not made it a priority to consume halal. We do not care about eating halal. If the suppliers, if the Muslim suppliers are asked about halal constantly, and inshallah, since we're running out of time, next week I'll explain what are the conditions that make things halal and what are the conditions that make things haram, and all of that will be from the Quran. All of that will be from the Quran, direct words of the Quran. We will not even use the hadith, although hadith is a very credible source of explanation of Quran. But all of that from the words of the Quran, we'll use it and we'll explain what makes a thing halal, what makes a thing haram, and what we should be looking for when we are trying to find halal. So inshallah, let us try and let us start thinking along those lines, that our ibadat depend on what we consume. To perform salah is easy. It takes only 5 to 10 minutes. To make it acceptable in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it takes 24/7 effort. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq. Inshallah, we'll talk about it more next week. Brothers who have prayed the sunnah can do salah. Jazakallah.